Welcome to How to Lose, War of Dots, so you don't have to, where I host you to witness tragic outcomes from embarrassing gameplay alongside what I hope to be helpful analysis on my poor performance. This will be the third episode, and this week I hit a severe case of burnout. My performance declined so bad I may bury that record forever. I want to return now to a time not so long ago where you see the beginnings of competent gameplay. But we won't go there, but return to our first meeting of Phileas. Check the tag Annihilator versus our highlight of today, Mykfree. Mykfree, aka Lava. You'll know him from the top of leaderboards, so let's get right into it. I've wanted to look at this map for a while now, so what the strategy is not here is to push south, either for red or blue. Pushing from the southwest is not a good idea. It is far too isolated. You will not be able to get reserves down there. It's too far out of the way, and those towns are very easy to defend on either side. So for blue, you want to push on red's A base, and red, they're wanting to push on B and C through that middle gap. Oftentimes they are able to also, if you do come from the southwest, as red is just as a response to blue withdrawing, either from the far southwest or from that gap between the lake and the mountain. So red really wants to defend A base because they have enough reserves to really hold blue back at those gaps. Blue, they're wanting to push on A base. They're able to get fairly close to A base to prevent red's regeneration bonus. Red does have somewhat of an advantage with their bases being closer together to cycle easier, but blue's able to essentially cancel out that advantage by pushing on A. Red's capital is in that forest, so if they plant like a heavy there, if the things do collapse, red's able to really hold out in case of a breach in their lines pretty well, actually. But blue's capital is a bit more exposed, just having that gap there to defend it. Really, once red's able to breach that, they're able to cycle really well there because you'll have so many reserves. This map does offer you a lot of reserves. But you will see I do the old strategy of trying to push south, which of course does not work once you hit a competent player, and it took him showing me that. These next two matches were genuinely the most fun matches I have ever done. At this point, we both had the exact same play style. It was aggressive encirclements. So I usually don't show strategies for world maps, but for this one, I think red's idea would have actually been to push A, defending the gaps between the woods and really just holding. Yeah, red had a really good placement with the forest and the mud patch, where they could have really held off blue very well. I do pretty decent with this map. I do lose this one. But really, I saw his capital was the closest base, so I did go for that. It wasn't a bad idea, but it was not very well executed. And you will see just us being the most... We were both too aggressive of players. It didn't matter who had troop advantage. It didn't matter all that much. We were going back and forth with each other, because it was just like taking chances, going for encirclements. That was our play style at the time. And honestly, if there was a way to bring that back, I would go for it. Like, this is how War of Dots should be played. It is the most fun play style to go with. And that's why I still go back to Roadhog's chant, because he's the only one I don't think has changed from that style. So honestly, like, I would love to go back. I would love to retain that aggressive play style. You will win, like, I used to win 90% of games, but that's not enough to be a top player. You need to be winning close to 95% of games, and that's what you will get with a more conservative play style. You can still go for encirclements and offenses at times, but you have to have things set up for it. You don't take like these crazy chances trying to get an encirclement of their entire army, going all or nothing. But that's where we were at this. It was just for a brief moment where we were both decent players, and he was probably better than me at this point. and we were both going for aggression. He seizes my capital, and from there, if I had my troops well positioned, I probably still could have gotten encirclement, but that's just the nature of this high risk game style we had. And of course, I'll give him the green check mark. On this map, I see correctly right away that he has a heavy advantage up north. I want to push everything down to the middle and push on A. I do that correctly. I don't quite defend the wood line correctly, though, and that costs me somewhat. That's one of the main things I would change. Also, of course, leaving my towns completely wide open. He could have just ran in and took my towns right away. He did try to sneak through and take my towns to the south. I did manage to hold on to those by the skin of my teeth. But again, just our aggressive playstyle. I'll encircle 3 of his units here, and I'm not quite sure if he recovers from that for the rest of the game. After that, it seems like I was at an advantage for the rest of the game with encirclements. Still well fought through the entire time. There wasn't a moment where I thought I had this in the bag. It was still back and forth. We still both have a very aggressive playstyle, so no, there's no settling on what you have. You just gotta keep fighting. I love this playstyle so much, and it was, again, this and the last game were the most fun games I've ever done. It was just back and forth. Some of these moves, I don't even know what I was doing. It was just, you just go in, you lock in. I didn't even see his name through this entire match. I'm just playing. I mean, I'm sure something deep down in me knew this is who I was fighting. And right here, like, oh my goodness, this is a terrible position I'm in. So I knew right away, like, I gotta do something. This was where locking in, trying to get it, this was an encirclement battle. This was the most intense encirclement battle probably that's ever I don't know anyone's ever had this kind of matchup. We were both at the top of our encirclement game. We were both fighting tooth and nail for every inch. My last move, trying to get my fresh units onto his capital, and really just getting his capital same way he beat me. Just this was the moment I saw his name, like able to take my first breath for that entire game, and realizing that who I fought, and that was, it was just one of those moments where I would love to go back to that kind of play style. This for me was one of the most educational recordings I've done. So really, the plan for Red, cycle units, push on A. This was the beginning of me learning, how to defend your bases, how to cycle. This was really the beginning of that for me. And so you'll see, how rough it is, how I'm not able to land my units actually on the bases. And you'll also see, some of the lessons of, don't don't go down rabbit holes. Don't dig yourself in too deep. Also, understand how big of a line you can go on offense with. You, even if you have a fully intact line, if you don't have reserves behind them, that line is going to crumble. So really, just what of course needs a lot of improvements is my cycling. Of course, it's very rough. So here's where I make my big mistake. I start to go after his town instead of keeping the fight where I have the advantage. I have the advantage currently, and I throw that away by using my reserves to extend my line further than the units I have for it. And he'll keep extending his line. I'll keep trying to outflank the line, extending my line further and further and further, expending my reserves. At the moment, it looks like all my units are in the green, but that won't last very long if you have no reserves to back them up with. And I just keep going on this chase after his town in the forest, where the original setup I had was really well to get his south, or his A base. And so I'm thinking, okay, if I can just keep the offensive up for just a few more seconds, I can get it going. So I bring additional units from the south to supplement my lack of reserves, just to keep an offensive going for just a little bit longer. But I lose control of the center, and so I lose all maneuverability. at this point, I have no ability to cycle at all. At that point, I should have withdrew, regain or reestablished my line and gone after it again. At that point, I did not have too bad of a troop detriment. In a few seconds before that, I even had the advantage, but I'm not able to cycle any of my units properly. So really, just like that mistake of chasing after that base in the woods, even though I had the reserves to extend my line that way, I didn't have any to back up the units those reserves are for, which was pushing on A base. And if I maintained that push, I probably would have pulled off this match. But after that point, he was just going to go after the woods again, just still chasing the rabbit down the hole again and again, and will be my fatal mistake in my first match against Talvi. And I knew he was a competent player going into this, so he would have won that probably either way. But it was interesting to see, how my mistakes led to that. It was very clear to see, I think. On this map, I saw two things. I saw I had a good funnel to push on his town, and I also saw the rocks to the south. If you know me, I always want to defend the rocks. Unfortunately, the two plans didn't quite work together at the same time. I had two things in my brain going at the same time, and unfortunately, well, quite fortunately actually, I defended the rock. I defended the rock very well. It's a very well defended rock there. So yeah, just push on the town, defend the rock, and those two plans didn't quite match up together. He encircles that entire army. So now I realize, oh my goodness, that lake is totally exposed. We gotta defend the lake. So then I have to transfer all my units over to that way to make sure he does not secure the lake. So yeah, this was just like it was botched up at the very beginning. So there was nowhere really going with it. I knew he was gonna beat. He's a good enough player where if he encircles 5 units at the beginning, I'm not gonna pull that one out. So yeah, just just drowning my units was the next best thing. Lake was secured. Unfortunately, that rock was not quite the place. I should have pulled back to the other side of the wood line, and you'll see a quick and easy victory for PNCG. This is another example of an old strategy running up against a decent player. So my old strategy was to swing around the southwest. The new strategy here, you want to pull back all of your red units, one heavy on the capital, everything up to your first heavy on that line, pull them all back. You'll have about 7 lights in reserve. So you can either push north towards D, the capital of blue, or C, depending on which line you think is more vulnerable at the moment. And you want to bring all of your northeast reds, you want to bring them down that passage. They can entrap blue's units, or they can even sneak around to the capital. So blue strategy is basically the same. You want to pull your units back from the south, and you want to push on A. Red is working really close to their towns. Part of that could be an advantage. They can cycle really quickly, but if they lose any ground, then they're going to lose their regeneration bonus. So you really have to form an arch on your west flank and hold that line to keep your regeneration bonus going. At first, I tried the old strategy, but I was learning in game like what new strategy I should use. Like this is the same thing you sort of see. You sort of saw with my last match with Lava and the other map, where I discover like in the middle of the game, okay, this is a competent player is showing me that my old plan sucks. And so I lose my first town. Like I sort of like discovered this like in the middle of the game, like, wow, you can actually go for their capital. Like that was never even an idea. Like I never considered that you could get their capital, but it's actually really tough for blue to get reserves into that little pass there. So red, if they just block the pass and get units hitting the capital, then it's actually easier than I thought to actually take the capital. So I took the capital. That won't win me the game, but perhaps in the future that is a plan I will attempt. That's the last match for this episode. I already have a few ideas for who I will highlight for next episode, and so I will see you then.